What's up, guys? Jared here. Got something really exciting for you guys. I have with me a philosopher and friend of mine, Diego Ruzzarin. Diego, how are you?
My friend, thank you so much for inviting me. An honor to be here.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun. So today we're trying out a format where we are going to be reacting to comedy videos that are specifically commenting on politics. The goal is ultimately like, is this funny? Not if we agree with the comedians, not if their position is morally right. I mean, if it ends up that we end up leaving here saying like all the left-leaning comedians are funny and all the right-leaning comedians aren't funny, then we'll kind of have failed my experiment, but we'll see what happens.
Cool.
All right. Without further ado, we got Julio in the booth. Julio, let's play the first clip.
I love Mexican foods. I love Mexican people. I don't even know what it is. I think it's just people. We have a connection. You know, South Africans and Mexicans and something. People from shithole countries. We have this thing. I still can't believe the things Donald Trump says. Logically, I can process him. Emotionally, I struggle. Yeah, there's terror and there's joy, and I don't know how to feel. It feels like there's a giant asteroid headed towards the Earth, but it's shaped like a penis. Like, I think I'm gonna die, but I know I'm gonna laugh. All we know is that he wants his wall. He wants his wall. Donald Trump wants his wall. He needs $25 billion the last time he asked. He needs it from American taxpayers because Mexico is smart. So he's like, folks, we're gonna build. We're gonna build a wall, folks. Who's gonna pay? Mexico. And Mexico was like, we ain't paying for shit, man. We might build it, but we're not gonna pay for it, man. You sometimes just wanna, pack it up, leave America, go back to South Africa and escape all this racism. Said my friend, you don't go to South Africa to escape racism. That's where you go to stock up. Are you kidding me? That's the one thing that reminds me of home. Racism out here.
That's awesome.
All right, Diego, what did you think?
Trevor is super good. I think like he's not only he's acting, but his body language, his gestures, like he has these hints of Jim Carrey, like the way he exaggerates facial expressions. I think it's funny. I can understand like being Brazilian and living in Mexico. Like I have two passports from shitty countries, which don't really do much for me. So I understand. I understand his metaphor of saying, guys, like, you guys complain about inequality and stuff, racism even in America, but you have no idea what it feels like in Latin America or in South Africa. Like this is real suffering. So I understand his position. I think it's funny because in a way, comedy is supposed to undermine power. So he's undermining power, but not really. It's like this is undermining in a sense that you feel like you can laugh at the emperor, but you're not doing anything against it. And in the end, the final comment I would like to make is that this notion that the wall was going to be paid by Mexico. It was interesting because in the end, it was kind of paid by Mexico. Mexico had to reinforce the borders with Central America, which is the main source of migrants that go to the U.S. They just flow through Mexico. Like a lot of migrants that end up in the U.S. are from Central America or even South America. They go through Mexico because they go walking. So the way they did it is that they didn't build the wall in Texas, but they obligated Mexico to reinforce the borders in the South. So in the end, yeah, kind of Mexico ended up paying for the wall in a different way, but it kind of worked, So I think it's funny because it has the traditional sexual jokes, the dick-shaped meteor, and so it works as a comedic bit because it's from the underdog throwing shit up to the abusive powers, to the emperor, to the king, to the president. So it works. Yeah, I think it's funny for me.
Yeah, I agree. I agree mostly because, yeah, Trevor is just good at impressions. The impression of Donald Trump is a really good one. I like that he does have that sense of scope and sense of worldliness when he talks about that, yeah, we can talk about racism here, but ultimately racism in the world is pretty bad.
Yep.
And yeah, you're right. He moves like a comedian. He talks like a comedian. He is very technically good. Even if Trump is your favorite person in the world, I think you can agree that the way that he imitates him is
pretty
really appealing and funny.
I think so.
All right, so Trevor Noah, funny. All right, Julio, let's hit the next clip.
Now we need to go to community by community, neighborhood by neighborhood, and oftentimes door to door, literally knocking on doors to get help to the remaining people protected from the virus.
Can I help you?
Oh, hi.
I'm with the Biden administration. Do you have a minute for me to tell you about the non-FDA approved injection we desperately want you to get?
Why the hell are you knocking on my door?
I'll take that as a yes. We've been reviewing your medical records, and it appears as though you haven't gotten the...
That's illegal.
Indeed. And what they show is you haven't gotten the shot yet. So I'm here on your private property to pressure you into doing so.
Letting politicians decide what medicines I take is insane. You're not doctors, you're not even qualified.
We're politicians. We like power. And we feel that qualifies us to do whatever we want.
It absolutely doesn't. What I put in my body
Okay,
is
let's cut it, Julio. Okay, so I'm going to go first with this one.
Please.
All right, so this guy's name is Awaken with JP. He's got almost like 2 million subscribers. Obviously, he appeals to a very conservative base. I don't think this is funny, and the reason is that A, it's just sarcasm, and B, he's just building a straw man and attacking it in a way that I think gets his base riled up. But again, like, I don't even know if you can consider this comedy, because really it's almost more like a religious sermon in a sense. You know, like, people come to have their opinions kind of parroted back to them in a kind of narrativized way with a little hint of sarcasm, and then that's it. But there's no real jokes, and it just goes on and on. But anyway, what do you think?
No, I'm sorry to say, but I hate this guy. Like, I think from the very first videos I saw of him...
Had you heard of him? Oh,
yeah,
you know
yeah,
of him.
yeah. I've seen plenty of his videos. I think the only one that actually made me laugh was the yoga one. That was one of the very early works that he did. But I think he just became more and more reactionary as he started pushing more content. And this is just the end result of a reactionary position. So I agree with you 100%. He's doing a strawman, but he's actually doing two strawmans. You know, this notion of the super legally aware citizen that is like, you know, my body is a property that is entitled to some legal rights, and I know my amendments towards health. And it's like, what? And then I think it's even dangerous to be this reactionary, because it's just undermining power, but all power. You know, like saying like, nobody has an answer. You should be the only one to decide that. Like, trust yourself and trust your instinct, which is ridiculous, because it almost contradicts his early videos. Like, you were against this notion of uber individualization provided by yoga and mindfulness, and now you're saying that people should resist vaccinations, which have existed for centuries, because suddenly we have awoken to the fact that government pushing for vaccines is unethical or unmoral or abusive or authoritarian. So I think it's full of flaws everywhere in the way he's building the logic. And the thing that kills the comedy to me is that from the very first second of the clip, you know he's trying to push a message. You know, there's a clear agenda of what he's trying to do, and you already feel like it feels more like a commercial than a comedy bit. You know, like, it feels like propaganda instead of being true comedy. That is, first intention is to make people laugh, and by laughing, you should become aware of some unforeseeable or almost translucent reality that is hidden from you. And this is completely the opposite. It's like he's putting like the cake in your face and almost like expecting you to laugh at these absurd characters that he's creating. Like, for me, it's not funny at all. Like, I wouldn't laugh in a year after seeing this.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit on your channel, where you said that, like, things are funny, therefore they're true. It's not they're funny because they're true.
Yeah.
And Scott, I guess we both have like this materialist vision of comedy. But yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's, you know, this is one of the problems about making it as a influencer and like having a community of people that like fund your livelihood, is ultimately the project becomes theirs. And if they are, you know, people that are very fiery about certain political positions,
right,
and, you know, you need to make certain numbers in order to stay afloat or to, you know, hit certain revenue numbers, you're going to end up just kind of no longer prioritizing comedy and start prioritizing just, you know, what people crave these days, which is like more divisiveness, sadly.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway.
100%. You get almost like kidnapped by your character, and you get kidnapped by your viewership, like by your viewers.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's crazy.
All right, so let's hit up clip 3, Julio.
All right, just drop my feminism pamphlet here. Excuse me, do you know which way it was to support feminism? Oh crap, I'm actually late for watching the reruns of WNBA exhibition games. If you want to come with,
No, I'm still working.
Over the last 5 years, pickup artists have been branded as misogynist. So in order to crush poon in a modern era, progressive pickup artists like myself have utilized a technique known as lying. That's amazing, you're very, very talented. Yeah. In order to turn a sentiment of hating men into a sniz tornado. Yeah, I just couldn't help but notice you guys making a little less money than your male counterparts, and that's not something I'm okay with.
Well, actually, we're doing very well.
I only support female artists and other genders other than men. Could I interest either one of you in female Ghostbusters and chill? Women want to be hunted, but for too long, wolves have made them their prey. It's time for the fox to get his dick wet. I just think it's ridiculous that I can have my shirt off, and if a girl takes hers off, it's like a problem. Hey, how's it going? I'm Ryan. You guys, could you give me your number, or do you want to?
All right, let's cut it, Julio.
This is interesting. This is interesting.
Yeah.
Can I hear your take first?
Sure. So this is Ryan Long, and although I haven't seen all of his comedy, I do like this one. And I actually have a funny anecdote that you might like.
Go ahead.
So having come from Los Angeles, where, I think it is kind of like the hotbed of some of like the more reactionary left tendencies, I have this friend who did this thing. It's like a bad faith woke dating practice. He would take a girl to a bar, and they would both order a drink, and right before the girl was about to take her first sip, he would like cover her glass and say, "Now hold on a second. Just want to let you know that I've been reading about the philosophy of consent, and if you take one sip of that alcohol, you can't consent into us hooking up later. So I need to know right now.
Oh my God.
Is there any chance that we're hooking up?" And the sad thing is that like in a environment like Los Angeles, you kind of can like
Imagine
culturally blackmail somebody into, because if you make any appeal to like progressive notions, even if it's obviously in bad faith, people feel very uncomfortable going against them. And so he said it would often work because these girls would just be like, God, I guess you're right. Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, we might have sex later. And then at that point, he just knows he's in.
Oh my God, that's insane.
I know. And so I think, like, realistically, guys, whether you're progressive or conservative, guys are horn dogs. And if progressive politics are the new in thing, they're going to find a way to exploit it.
Oh my God, that's
so,
crazy.
I find that there's some truth to this one, and I find it quite funny.
Well, yeah, and I love the way you ended your analysis by saying there's some truth in it, therefore it's funny, right? Because there's this notion that this cycle between comedy and tragedy is this notion that if you repeat a tragedy enough times, it will become comedy. But if you keep repeating the comedy enough times, it will become tragedy again. It's almost weird. Like you can imagine somebody like falling on a banana peel, right? The first time is like, so are you okay? Did you hurt yourself? But if it keeps falling again and again, it will become like, dude, like you're just clumsy. You're falling on the banana peel every day. But then after a year of the guy falling on the banana peel in the same spot for a year, you're like, man, like how can I help it? This is insane. Like this is a tragedy, So I think even reading politics, especially progressive politics, we have to read them in this cycle between comedy and tragedy. I think that, of course, gender inequality is a real problem. But when it becomes appropriated by the upper middle class to become an aesthetics of complaint, then it gets voided of all meaning. And it just becomes aesthetics. So then it can easily become comedic because it's no longer attached to any real suffering. I would love to discuss, gender inequality, speaking about women of color, of lower class, because they suffer the most. But when you say when you say that gender inequality is about high level income white girls in Los Angeles, it's like, man, really? Like this is not what we're talking about. It's purely aesthetic. And of course, the issue is that they appropriate so much the discourse that they don't leave any room for the right debate to take place where people actually need the debate to take place. They just hijack the conversation to a purely aesthetic position. And I think this is actually funny because this is like the simp point of view of the instrumentalization of gender equality to the same nefarious end of of having easy sex, which is brilliant because it's like a double inversion where they say, so now the aesthetics of flirting, it's via inequality. Okay, great. So I can use that same I can use the same form because he's still dressed like a clown. He's using the peacocking strategies. You know, he's dressing colorfully, wearing a hat, having a piece of content that is always like starting a new conversation. So he's doing all the form, but he's just using the content, the aesthetic content of woke debate. So I think it works super well because it's still empty. He's still the pickup artist that is just instrumentalizing language as a means to an end. He's doing the same thing. He's just updating the type of language that he has to use to appeal to the female audience at this time. But it's just as 100% misogynistic as the original pickup artist. So I think it's a great beat. I think it's very original, super well thought of.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you talking about basically opinion as aesthetics. I've been reading some John Locke lately, and he talks about how public opinion is basically fashion.
Yeah.
And I'd love to talk to you more about that another
Oh
time.
yeah,
because
it's
I'm
an awesome
loving
topic.
it. Yeah.
That's why.
Okay,
That's why.
Julio, let's...
Sorry. That's why we used to say that. You know, like for example, sustainable consciousness without class consciousness is just gardening. And the same thing is for gender equality. Gender consciousness without class consciousness is just aesthetics, just pickup artists.
I love it. All right, Julio, let's go to the next one.
I kind of think Donald Trump is like the Air Bud of American politics. But I also think Air Bud was the villain of that movie. Imagine for a moment that you are one of the kids on the other basketball team.
Absolutely.
You're one of the kids who has to play basketball against a golden retriever in front of your parents.
And get wrecked.
You're just a kid who loves basketball, right? You've been practicing. You know the rules of basketball. You showed up to the gym that day expecting to play another child at basketball. That was Hillary Clinton, right? She was just like, put me in, coach, for the last 20 years. We finally did, and as soon as we did, this fluffy dog who has no business on the court, running out, distracting everybody. He doesn't know the rules. He is a dog. He's traveling like crazy. Where's the ref? And everyone's just fine with it because there's nothing in the rule book.
Oh my God, yeah, it's so true.
That says a pumpkin-headed racist can't be president. Let's write more rules, maybe. How about that? That seems like a pretty obvious thing.
All right, Julio, let's cut it. All right, so I think you might have a different take on this one than me, so why don't you go first?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed it at the beginning, but I hated the closing punchline. Like the moment she got more realistic and she said that we needed to add more rules, that ruined the fun for me. Like I like the idea of this inversion of expectations, you know, like playing with the game with it, you know, like, yeah, he's like Air Bud, but Air Bud is the villain of the movie. I love that. I think it's a super smart take on how you guys felt this trauma of, you know, I think it's always like this. We know politicians are phony in the sense of like they're fake. They're artificial. The way they speak is completely made up. You know, we know they're lying and manipulating all the time. We know politics is fake, but we all pretend that politics is real. The moment Donald Trump enters the game of politics, the phoniness of politics becomes evident and undeniable for everyone. So we have to deal with it. I think facing the fact of absurdity forces you to take a stance and admit that absurdity has been there all along. And I think Trump is a very before and after event in American politics because it's almost like a reloaded Reagan with steroids. And it's just like full of all this imagery and the language and the absurdity of reality TV inserted into politics. So I think the metaphor works super well comparing Air Bud to Donald Trump. But I really dislike the way at the end she was like, so we need more rules. You know, like she's almost saying, let's go back to pretending politics is real. This is what I hate. You know, like this is like, it's almost like learning nothing from it. It's almost like, okay, you finally got an event that is subverting the whole institution, proving to you that institution has always been a joke. And now that you have proof of it, that you have facts to assert it properly, you want to go back to pretending it still works. It's just a matter of adding a few more rules here and there. That was a breaking point for me. It was a beginning at the beginning it was funny, but at the end I didn't like it.
Yeah, I really like your perspective on the beginning, and I totally am with you there on the end. The beginning, I guess, like to your point, though, I think that the beginning works the best if, yes, we do think of the dog as a superhero. But the problem is Trump is not a superhero. He's just a guy.
Yeah.
And I really also dislike the moralizing at the end because at the end of the day, like, I think that, you know, whether you hate Trump or love Trump, one of the beauties of democracy is that, like, we don't have to, you know, in this metaphor, I suppose that the regular children playing basketball are just regular politicians. And one of the beauties of democracy is that we can elevate anyone not being a politician to the highest office in the land. So that point really kind of ruined it for me. I think I also just know the movie Air Bud a little bit too well. So, and then to your point about, you know, like the other children being
unequal,
or like Air Bud being the bad guy, or the other children's perspective not being taken into account. I mean, I think you can really say that that's more about any movie. I think that's really more of a point about just like the subjectivity of a camera or of narrative storytelling in general, and that it just has to tell a particular perspective.
Right.
So I thought the point was a little bit weak, but I think that her delivery is good. I think that she does that kind of sarcasm pretty well. I just think that, like, it's one of those points that kind of falls apart once you start thinking about it a little bit too much.
I agree.
But I almost think maybe you're giving her too much credit with your thing about politics becoming real, because I do like that point. I just don't know if that's what she was going for. But death of the author, who cares?
Yeah, again, this is hermeneutics. We can do whatever we want with the text.
Yeah. Okay, we got two more. So let's hit the next one, Julio.
Oh, hi. Have you or a loved one had a baby recently? We hate to say this, but you might have just brought a white supremacist into the world. Don't worry, though. We're here to help. It's important to always look for clues of racist tendencies in your newborn so that you can nip that in the bud. 5 troubling signs that your baby might be a white supremacist. Sign number 1, he's white, which automatically makes him a racist. If your newborn is white, then sorry, it's game over. Your baby will be irredeemably racist forever. Sad. Sign number 2, your baby has no hair, which is a common neo-Nazi hairstyle. Is your baby a skinhead? Having no hair is a colossal red flag. Shows his white fragility by crying all the time. Crying is a sure sign of defensiveness and a fear of honest conversation. Not good. 4, your baby refuses to say Black Lives Matter. Seriously, what is so hard about saying Black Lives Matter? The phrase goo goo gaga has 10 letters in it. Do you know what else has 10 letters in it? Heil Hitler. 5, your baby shows colorblind. Colorblindness is racist. Minorities need their own separate spaces without white invaders. Decolonize your playtime, mom and dad. If you
All right, let's cut it, Julio. Have you seen this video before, Diego?
No, never.
I want you, just give me a guess. Who do you think made this? Or like, what do you think the persuasion of the company or person that made this is?
PragerU?
Close. It
Really?
was the Babylonbee.
Oh my God, really? Well, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It has to be something. It has to be somebody that is really defending almost indefensible arguments. They immediately they turn it up to 11. You know, the joke is just like out of control way too quickly. Like relating babies to Hitler is just is way like excessive force. It's like overkill of trying to play this character of wokeness. You know, of course, maybe somebody in a forum in Reddit or Twitter said, if you are bold, you're closer to Hitler than to a progressive, whatever. Somebody made a statement like that for sure. But painting it as a fact or as a predictable behavior of white supremacist critique, it can only be done from a super reactionary posture of so you guys put everybody that is white as a potential devil. You know, this is oversimplifying the argument as well. But this will be my 2 initial readings on the video. So who is this Babylon? I don't know them. They're closer to
the Babylonbee. Yeah, so the Babylonbee they're basically a religious Christian foundation that is, I think they must have gotten a round of investment recently because they are creating pretty high quality animations on their YouTube channel. And yeah, there are a lot of criticizing
wokeness,
like pronouns, wokeness, defunding the police.
Yep.
stuff like that. My big problem with this, and to be honest, the first time I saw this, I really wasn't entirely sure, because actually Julio found this clip, and and that's the thing, like a lot of this YouTube content, so much of it is like, do you see the title? Do you see who uploaded it? And like people kind of like rely on that a little bit in order to form the tone, which I don't think should be the case. The piece needs to speak its own tone. But my problem with this is that for years, conservatives have been complaining that like shows like The Daily Show are basically just like show the opposite position and then make a sarcastic, funny face and just like make fun of their position. And I've always been very sympathetic to that position. And I've always thought like, yeah, they're making a point that comedy needs to be better. Yep. And instead of making comedy better and more universal, and again, just not being reliant on agreeing for a particular political position, they just did the same thing on the other side of the aisle.
Exactly.
And it's the exact same, just kind of
strawman,
low grade sarcasm and strawman.
Yep, I agree.
And
100%.
I mean, on the one hand, like, I guess The Daily Show was a proof of concept for the fact that there is demand for this. So obviously there'll be demand on the other side of the aisle. But again, if you see someone on whether the left or the right doing something that can be improved upon, improve on it. Don't just dive more into divisiveness.
I agree 100%, and I love your analysis, because this constant dialectics between shape and content, like aesthetics and content. In a way, like what they did, they're criticizing the left for doing strawmans by doing strawmans. It's like, dude, really?
Right.
Like you're doing exactly the same thing. You're just changing the contents of it, which again, like it shows the limit of the criticism you can get from comedy. Because in comedy, in a way, you need certain stereotypes, you need certain archetypes, you need people to be able to relate to these fictional characters that are so true they're believable. But then again, some people are so radical that they end up behaving like archetypes. They're not people anymore. They're just acting out these opinions the way they think they should be acted, and they become the characters. But this is also an interpretation of how we're living in this society of spectacle, as described by Baudrillard. Like this notion that sign value exchange is more important than the referential real object. So we have no longer a real to relate to. We just have like this interreferential matrix of signs that relate to each other, and we're creating this intention of communication by just relating signs back to each other again and again, and we get lost in this, like it's a remix of a remix of a remix.
Loop.
Yeah,
right. It's a feedback loop where the viewers become the character and then require the people they see on the screen to become the character and themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of a nightmare. All right, so we're going to do one more, and then we'll wrap it up. So Julio, play the last clip.
What's going on, man? What's going on, brother? My son came to me today, and he told me that he identifies as a woman, and as an ally of the LGBTQIA plus community, I support her decision. Oh, okay. Good for him. She told me that she wanted to transition, and as an ally of the LGBTQIA plus community, I support her. Yeah, I mean, we live in different times, be a true self, I guess. How old is this one? 19, 20 now? Oh, not my oldest, my 5-year-old. What? Yes, Lil Brandon, now known as Brittany, wants to live in her truth. And as an ally of the LGBTQIA plus community, I support her. What the? What is wrong with you, D-Wade Griffy? As an ally of the LGBTQIA plus community, I have to support this decision. Because if I don't support this decision, I'm transphobic and I'm against the LGBTQIA plus community, which I support. Ooh la la! The LGBTQ alphabet gang, they are some bullies. That is a damn child. He hasn't even jacked off yet. Wait till he get that first nut. It's gonna change his mind. It's gonna change his life. The little nigga's still in elementary. Mind ain't even developed. He ain't even big enough to get on the rides at Six Flags. Don't do that to that boy.
She's a girl.
No! That is a boy until he is old enough to make thorough decisions. It's not a girl. He gay. He like dick, and that's fine. That's okay. I thought about sucking dick a couple times in my life, but that's okay. That's okay. As an ally of the LGBT... Shut the up! Shit! God damn, man. Delete his Twitter. Because that's where you're getting all this shit from. You're getting it from... Damn liberals! Pushing the LGBT agenda.
Ay caramba!
We're
Tutti frutti.
Griffy, we need to talk.
So this guy, LongBeachGriffy, he's one of my favorites. I mean, he shows it off a little bit less in this video, and he doesn't always do political stuff, but he is so expressive, and like some of his best videos are just him reacting to like off-screen sound, and just the subtle changes in his face are really great. But the thing I like about this video, you know, we talked a little bit about John Locke earlier and about like the tyranny of public opinion, and I really like how there's like a physical manifestation of it at the end. And I just think it's so funny that the guy who says as an ally of the LGBT, he sounds like someone has a gun to his head the whole time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah, again, like the tyranny of public opinion can make people, you know, like wear the fashionable opinion or the fashionable perspective, because in a way they don't know that it's okay to disagree.
So for me, like, this video is all over the place for me. Like, it has high highs, low lows, some so-sos, and I think my explanation to it will be, this is an NPC meme in a way. Like they're doing the NPC meme in video, right? So the progressive guy is portrayed as an NPC because he has no original individual thought. He's just repeating sentences without understanding what he's saying. And I think this is a very valid criticism, completely valid, especially valid right now. And I think way too many people ends up repeating mantras and opinions that they don't own. They don't even understand. A lot of people even use words that they don't understand. It's even worse and more dangerous when you repeat opinions that you don't understand. Because, you know, again, we're falling into strawman. What we should do in communication is to draw Ironmans of arguments, not strawmans. Like present the strongest version of an argument by saying that, okay, and it's even weird because when the back and forth between characters, and let's say progressive and conservative, right? So the conservative version of the character is saying like, it's okay to be gay, but it's not okay to transition. So he's probably closer
only at a certain age. I mean, at the beginning he says like, yeah, whatever, cool.
Yeah, exactly. And I think adding these shades of gray, it's really the right way to have these conversations. You know, like saying, where do we draw the line? Because again, with subjective morality, everything is permissible. Then we're just gonna be eating Nutella spaghetti tomorrow, and nothing will make sense anymore. And I think just like adding these shades of gray, like saying, okay, like there's an age limit, there's a consent limit, there's a formation of character limit. But again, when it becomes everything so complicated for me is that, okay, so you have this notion that character is built. Okay, so this will lead you to the fundamental philosophical argument of existence comes before essence. So again, it's an anti-human nature argument.
Where is he? There he is.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if you could see.
Sartre? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that argument. And you know, this notion of, okay, so if existence precedes essence, so you have to be aware of material conditions for the formation of character, right? So if somebody starts an argument by saying that there's no such thing as human nature, you're a leftist. You just haven't read enough. This is what is so weird for me about most of these arguments. Like I hear people saying these things, and I'm like, dude, you're a leftist. Just haven't read enough. Like you can start by the very basic sense of is there a human nature or not? Are we conditioned by the environment and our material conditions? Okay, then we have to create the fair and just and right material conditions for people to develop characters in order to participate in society. We're not promoting competition as a natural law that will filter out weaker characters from stronger characters. which is what the market does super well. So again, you see that he's trying to portray the leftist as an NPC, but the right guy, the conservative guy, is just as an NPC and he's almost more as an NPC, and he doesn't even know, because he's defending an anti-human nature argument without even noticing it. This is what is insane for me.
So
please go ahead.
So what do you think about, I mean, like, one of the parts that I like the most about this is when he talks about, like, I mean, sometimes I think that, like, the best comedians are basically just, like, obscene philosophers where they say something that's a little bit, like, kind of pushed past the line, but actually has, like, some really good point to it. Like, what do you think about just the notion of, like, the little kid hasn't even jacked off yet? I think that it's...
Yeah, and I love that punchline, and the other one when he says like man, I wanted to suck dick before, but that's okay, like, and but he's also it's interesting because he still has this notion of Judeo-Christian values as a halo that is almost like delimiting the limits of what's permissible. Like he's talking about jacking off almost as a, you will eventually find this pleasure that will resignify your gender, and it will give a sense of meaning to your sexual identification, which is jacking off. And then you will find that even perversion can give you extra pleasure, because it's the pleasure of sucking dick plus the pleasure of doing something that is forbidden or wrong. Conservatism is very close to cynicism and hypocrisy, because you get twice the pleasure. You get the pleasure of doing what you want to do, of following your desire, and you get the extra pleasure of doing something that was forbidden in the beginning. And it's almost like saying, like, man, no, like even if he likes to suck dick, it's okay. He will enjoy it more if he pretends it's wrong. And he's building all this narrative with subtle hints of what is right and what is wrong as a presupposed position of Judeo-Christian values, traditional conservative values. This narrative is like a silhouette that is drawing the lines of how he understands reality, and that's the frame that makes the punchlines funny. And I love this notion that you won't be a man until you jack off. Like, of course, sexuality is conformative of your gender identity, but I deny it nevertheless, which is like, what?
So for those people at home unfamiliar with Diego, his wife is a Lacanian psychoanalyst. So a lot of this is coming from that. No, it's great. I love the perspective. I definitely see where you're coming from, and I just want to make clear that I don't think Griffy is necessarily conservative. I definitely see like a lot of the presupposing a kind of rubric for what is an acceptable sexual expression and how that informs your identity definitely has its roots in Judeo-Christian values. But and he doesn't always talk about politics, but I think that when he does, it's usually, I think, and what I like so much about it is him kind of pushing the line, using obscenity to kind of make a point that is worth thought. I think that George Carlin did that very well too. When he would say something like just about language, whether it's the 7 curse words you can't say on TV, or when he's talking about like, I don't want to get on the plane, I want to get in the plane. And then there's just like things subtle, that people hadn't considered before that like makes it so funny. So I think that Griffy sometimes does that. And again, the reason why we watched that entire clip is because I really liked the kind of physical manifestation of public opinion that is like a little bit tyrannical in its hold through the, I guess you would say, an NPC meme. It's funny that you say that. And by the way, you are probably more aware of kind of the culture war USA stuff than I am, because you've been very on top of this shit through this recording.
I'm a 4chaner, man. I was in 4chan for a very long time during my teenage years. I know how to 3-4. I'm not a summer. I really know how to survive. Like I know my shit for 4chan, and like I grew up with this culture, and I think most of Latin Americans did. I was exposed to American culture early on, and I was a big fan of the movie industry, superhero industry, comic book industry. I grew out of it. Not really. I kind of grew out of it in the sense that I discovered that in the end, most of the guys that I admire ended up being the villains in real life. But it was part of our culture. And in the end, I think growing up in Latin America, it's almost like growing up in the backyard of the USA. We are never truly independent. Like whatever happens in the US has more political effect in our region than anywhere else in the world. And I think as I moved from Brazil to Mexico, I felt it even closer. People say in Mexico, that the problem with Mexico is that we are very close to God, but too close to the U.S.
You're probably right that it's more pronounced where you are, but in Finland I see the same thing. I mean, I always tell everybody, because they always make this statement. They're like, "Oh, it's so weird that I know so much, or maybe even more about U.S. culture things than you do," and I say it's not weird. That's our biggest export is culture.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, so Diego, thank you so much for hanging out with me, man. This was a lot of fun. This actually turned out better than I thought it would be. This was really cool. Guys, if you're watching this, check out Diego's channel. It's just his name, Diego Ruzzarin. By the way, I stole my whole background from his brother, Mateus.
It turned out great, by the way.
Both of these guys... Oh, thank you. Yeah, both of these guys are crazy brilliant. Right now, Diego's channel is in Spanish, but I promise you, it's worth learning Spanish to follow this guy.
That's the best compliment I've gotten in such a long time. That's crazy. And Jared, thank you so much for doing this. I think it's completely timely and super interesting that you're doing this right now, because I think comedy has taken way too much space in political critique. So I think you're right on spot, and as always, brilliant and seen ahead of time as doing as a critique of politics. Like I adore. The moment you told me the name of the show, I was in love with it immediately.
Okay, next time I would be interested to hear about your opinion on the legacy of The Daily Show, because I think it's really significant into the comedy landscape that we're in right now. And although I'm a big fan of Jon Stewart as a person, I'm a little bit torn about his legacy in the political and comedic world.
It's perfect, because at the moment the issue is, just giving you a little spoiler. As always, in Latin America, we are like almost 1 or 2 political cycles behind you guys. And when I say political, I mean aesthetic and content, type of candidates and everything. So we're just getting our first celebrity presidential candidate that is a right reactionary proto-fascist behavior. We got one in Brazil, and we're probably going to get one in Mexico very, very soon. And the issue with that is that comedically, we are also 1 or 2 cycles behind. So right now, people in fashion are like The Daily Show and these comedic shows were almost 8 years ago. So like things are out of order, like I think the progressive discourse around the world is in a position, and comedic discourse in Latin America is probably 8 years behind. So I think there's also this effect of you guys exporting comedy as political critique, and we catching up way too late. So we're also behind on that versus where we should be on the political discourse.
Well, that's why people like you are so important, because hopefully you can, convince enough people, and your channel is growing so fast. Congratulations, by the way. And yeah, you can convince enough people to see the signs.
Yeah, I would love to have you again on my channel, Jared. If it's possible, then we can do something about movies. I would love to analyze a movie with you. Let's choose a movie that we love between the two of us. Even Matrix. If you want to do Matrix, I would love to do Matrix. Then we can.
Let's make a tentative plan. After Matrix 4 drops, we're going to collab.
For sure. That'll be awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It was really, really fun.
No, thank you, everyone. We're signing off. We're going to probably do more of these. Hope you're enjoying the channel so far. Subscribe for more content. Peace.